Lindsay from My Crafty Plans. Welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, welcome. Happy PLANMAS! I am so excited. So today I have a very quick video for you where I am going to be sharing my most viral stencil tips and tricks from TikTok and Instagram. This year, videos where I've used stencils or shown some stencil tricks have been super popular on TikTok and Instagram, and actually especially on TikTok. And I thought it would just be fun. Some of my favorite tips and tricks when it comes to using different stencils in your planner. If you are a regular watcher of my Plan With Me's, these are things you will probably have seen me done. You may have even heard me mention them, but here they are all in one place. So I have a couple of different stencils here. I've also got two zebra pens here. This is the Sarasa Mark-On and the Click Art pen. And the reason that I have these are the most highlighter friendly pens. They dry instantly, so they're really highlighter friendly. And that's perfect because the first tip that I'm actually going to share with you involves highlighters, so I thought that would be a perfect place to start. So for this one, this trick works with any of our rulers. I'm going to use this acrylic one here from Chrissy Ann Designs. One of the questions that I do get asked most frequently is, where are the stencils from? All of my clear acrylic stencils, the ones that look like this, are all from Chrissy Ann Designs. And then the metallic stencil here is, of course, from MoxieLife. Those are my two commonly used stencils. I do have this new one from Erin Condren that I just got that is gold that I'm excited to try out as well. But let's just jump in with this first trick. And if you watch my Plan With Me's, this is one you will definitely have seen me do a bunch of times. And this is how I usually color code my to-do list. Just realized this stencil is actually sized for a daily duo, and this is an Archer and Olive notebook, which has 5mm dot grid on it. So this is a bonus tip because I don't even think I've shared this one. So this one, if you want to use this stencil or stencil that's not sized the same width as the lines or the dot grid on your planner page, you still totally can. You just slide it as you go, and I'm using the dot grid to keep everything lined up. I know that's really hard to see, but I do have this Chrissy Ann Design stencil here that has a bunch of different line spacings on it. It's the line spacing sampler one, and I believe this first one up at the top is 5mm, so I can actually use this, and just then everything is lined up perfectly. Okay, so now for the actual trick, which is usually when I am writing in my planner, I make my to-do list, and then I go back and decide how I want to color code it. So what I want to do now is add color. So all I'm going to do is reline up my stencil over top. This one is, you can do this one with a metallic or an acrylic stencil, it doesn't matter, and then I can just color right in. If you use a regular pen, it is good to give it a second to dry. Or with the Click Art marker or with the Mark-On pen, it dries pretty instantaneously, so you can just highlight over it right away. And then that is how I get the really clean, crisp line on the outside with the color on the inside. Versus another thing that I do in my planner sometimes is I will draw the box and then I will outline it with the color, and I actually won't use the stencil to outline it, and then it just gives it a completely different look where it's more outside the edges. Let me grab a darker stencil for that one. So both really fun, but just very different looks, and two different ways you can do them depending on your mood with the stencil. So that is the first trick. Now the second trick I originally had shown with the MoxieLife bookmark stencil, because when this bookmark stencil first came out, I saw a lot of people, especially on the MoxieLife Facebook community, asking how you were supposed to get this to line up in the planner, since it's really hard to see through since it's metal. But this does actually work with any metal planner, and that is how you use the dot grid to get this lined up. So this stencil is sized for a MoxieLife, so I do have a MoxieLife dot grid notebook right here, because MoxieLife dot grid is 6mm, I believe, not 5mm. Yes, so MoxieLife dot grid is 6mm, which is larger than a standard dot grid. It's so that the dots line up with their lines on their planners for when you're in something with a MoxieLife that has dot grid and lined sections, everything lines up. So the way that this works, and again, I on editing, I'm going to try and zoom you in super close, is I use the dot grid to line this up. If you can see the dot grid while you are looking at the stencil window here, which like the little window inside where you draw, if you can see the dot grid, that means you are not aligned with to be inside the dots or inside the lines. So what I'm going to do is I am going to move my stencil so that I can't see any dot grid inside these squares, and then I will be perfectly lined up inside the squares, and I can just go all the way down, and it's gonna make the boxes perfectly inside the dot grid so that I can write really evenly inside the dots. And I did justify these ones all the way to the edge of the dot grid, but if I want it to be even more center, I can use the dot grid to line that up. So now I have the stencil so that the dot is right in the middle. So now I can just scooch all the way over and then also scooch up and down just to kind of see. And then we are perfectly in the center. So again, this would work with any metal stencil. Basically, just use the dot grid to keep things aligned and kind of just hide if you're hiding the dots, you're going to be in between them. If you're going to see the dots, you're going to split them. So maybe I want to split the dot for a certain box, or maybe I want to be directly in the middle, so I can just line myself up and draw, and then I am in the middle of that set of dots. So that was my second stencil trick, really easy for when you're using metallic stencils. And you may have noticed that I wiggled a little bit on that, which actually brings me to my third trick, which is how to cover a mistake when you get a little wiggly with your line. So for this one, let's draw a bigger box here. And again, this is just another Christian Design stencil. So say I like kind of just messed up this edge here, which that's a pretty bad mistake. I just wiggled and I made a little mistake with the stencil. How do I cover that? Well, I am just gonna grab either my same pen or even better, a thicker pencil marker in the same color, and I am just gonna trace over it and cover it with a darker marker, or what we're gonna do, especially if the line is on the bottom, I'm going to turn it into a drop shadow. So that one I went all the way around. So let's do another one where I turn it into a drop shadow. So again, if I wiggled on the bottom line here and I wasn't happy with the way that that looked, especially if it's on the bottom line or on the right and the bottom, because that is usually where I would be putting a drop shadow, I can just retrace over that line, and then I can wiggle my stencil up a little bit each time and a little bit down each time until I'm happy with how that line is covered, and I just have a thicker line at the bottom here. And then we have a drop shadow on our box, so we can extend that drop shadow over onto this side to make it really pop out. This one was one of my favorites because, again, even when I'm using a stencil, sometimes I make mistakes. That box looks so good. That's also how you would just make a drop shadow on a stencil. Even if you didn't make a mistake, you can always add a drop shadow in. It just really gives a really nice dramatic look. And again, this one's super easy. If you've got a darker marker, you can just cover that original line in the darker marker, and it just gives like that really nice bold look. It really pops, but you can do it with the pen. You just keep wiggling. And we've got a drop shadow. So again, that one is one of my favorites. And then the last one that I have, my most viral stencil trick, which the original TikTok for where I shared this actually has over 2 million views, is this trick using an Erin Condren ruler. This actually works with any ruler that clips into your planner. And that is, you can use these rulers, you can use the coil clips on them to make a checklist. Basically, use these circles as a little checklist, and you can just line this up and draw your circles around. and you have a little checklist. So there's a few different ways you can use to kind of close out your checklist depending on the exact clips in your coil. So this one is with an Erin Condren ruler. This works with pretty much any coil clip. So I can just freehand the end of the circle closed, and with the Erin Condren one, it's not that big, so the gap is not that big, so it's pretty easy to just do. It's not gonna be perfect every single time, but you can do that. You can also just draw the circle, flip the ruler around, and use that to close out the circle. You can also bring this to close in a teardrop shape. So if I work this all the way around and then I bring it just to close to a point in the center, and then it's like a little teardrop shape, that also works. One thing that I really like, especially on the new MoxieLife clip-in rulers that came on the coil clips, I love the coil clip on this. It's got more of a square shape. So for this one, what I actually really like is, again, if you just trace it around, and this one I'm gonna leave open, and then I'm actually just gonna use the ruler edge on the other side to kind of close these off in a little box. And I just think that that one looks so cute. I did miss a little piece right there. Again, you can always reline your stencil back up. It's a planner. It doesn't have, these are to-do lists. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I do think that that looks so cute. I really love the MoxieLife one for a checklist as well. And that's really fun, especially if you keep your ruler clipped into your planner, or you always have one handy, which I always have these handy because I use this to just draw straight lines all the time, but you can also use it to just make yourself a checklist. And that's it. Those are my 4 big stencil tips and tricks. I hope you enjoyed seeing them all in one place. If you've got any great stencil recommendations or any tips that you use on the stencil, leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to come back tomorrow for another PLANMAS video. You can also join in on the fun over on TikTok and Instagram at My Crafty Plans. You can see the original stencil videos there, plus way more planner fun. And I will talk to you all tomorrow. Bye.